In my last video on this vehicle, I called it a mini tank. And a few people mentioned in the comments that it's not really a tank if you can't actually shoot anything. Since this is the Christmas season, I've been doing holiday shopping in stores, and that kind of gives me inspiration to fix that problem. So let's see what we can do about making this thing a little more armed. Since my last video on this, I haven't done a whole lot. I found the ignition cover, got the back seat, not exactly mounted. I did find a fuel tank on sale, and that looks like it will fit in this curved back section where it's supposed to go. And I bought a set of spark plugs. I ordered what's supposed to be the B8HS. It's the wrong part number. It's a BR8HS. That's a resistor plug, and that's what I did not want. I bought those parts from Rock Auto because they're really cheap there. And right away they got me 2 more plugs. Correct part number on the box, wrong part number inside. Since I got a free set of these, we're going to throw them in and see what happens. Now that's the correct part number. Could be worse. Basically identical, except this one flows less electricity. So let's try it out. Apparently they flow enough. Runs fine. This mounting system works so well, it's almost a shame to have to undo it. This tank came with a plug in it. I gotta get a fitting to go to a line. So I dug through my box of fittings. I've got a 5/16 line on this. I've got fittings to go to 3/8 and fittings to go to 1/4 inch. This one has a 90-degree angle, so I'm gonna use this. This fuel line's fairly new. Hopefully it's stretchy. Yep. One size up, no problem. We're in the ballpark here, but that opening is just too small. Needed to be more that size. So I'm going to take a hole saw and pop it through a piece of scrap plywood. Then we put the plywood where we want the hole to be. Make sure you use a big enough piece of plywood to put some clamps on there. Yeah, it's kind of held in. Add some actual sturdy clamps instead. Get rid of the wobbly clamps. We can use that as a pilot for our hole saw. Some realignment might be needed. It's very grabby. There we go. A little mangled, but it came out. It's definitely very grabby material. Don't feel any more burrs, so we're good. And it fits. I didn't really like the supplied mounting straps because it holds it too far away from the hull. So I'm going to hold the tank where I want it and mark where it contacts. Can't really mark on the bottom, so I'm just going to hold my finger there, hope it stays in place. There. That's how I want it to end. Close enough. Lined up with my mark on the top. Got my mark on the bottom. And we'll transfer that. Somehow pencil on black doesn't show up well. So I'll take something sharp lying around and just scratch the surface. Oh yeah, that's digging right through that paint. There's my mark. So in this extra material, I'm going to make a mounting bracket. Clamp it so that mark is showing right above the vise jaws. Hammer in a vise to make a pretty sharp bend. When I tighten down the bottom bolts, I got a bit of a gap in the top, but this tank, that is totally sturdy. This could come in handy again. It's a little bit broken, but not entirely. I got some extension springs for a screen door. 1/2-inch conduit. Fits them pretty nicely. Something like that should do. I drilled some holes in the 1x1 so that 1/2-inch conduit can fit right through it. We already know these are the right color to match the paint, and that fits right between those two. I cut right through the hole I just drilled, leaving a half moon shape on either side. There's a big burr inside that hole, and I can't get to it from any direction except through the hole. This is definitely something you probably shouldn't do. That's an end mill, a broken one, chucked up in a drill press. I'm going to use that to actually machine away that burr and make a chamfer inside that hole from the back side. It worked. I ground the galvanizing off the end of the conduit. I put them in those U-grooves left on either end, clamped the whole thing together. These ends should be pretty straight and parallel, at least fairly close. I ran those springs through the tubes, attached them with a self-drilling screw. Now on the top here, I'm going to take the loop they provide and bend it over some. Now I can attach it to a sidewall. Somewhere in this area, springs are bolted to the sides of the tube, buckets in place. I ended up drilling a hole in the cross member all the way through so I could run a rope right through the whole thing. I think we're getting somewhere. And I kind of broke it. We apparently need reinforcing too. Doesn't quite cut it. It cuts most of the way through. I have to rotate it to get that last little bit. And then realign it when it falls out of the saw. Now I can blend in the mismatched cuts and do some deburring. There's still a pretty good crack, goes up to about there. So I need to reinforce this piece, and I need to mount the entire unit. I took some 2x2 tubing, drilled some holes in it. I'm going to run these bolts on either side of that crack, and that should hold it together. Problem is, this tubing's flat. No rocking at all. Got a box up here that should be helpful. With my box of pulleys and some extra stuff, I should be able to do something here. I'm eyeing these three identical pulleys. These pulleys are meant to be hung on a hook or something like that. This has got a lot of swivel to it. You can tell by the mounting method, it's meant for this just to be pulled. I don't need these little swivel eyes. I'll just clamp that in the vise. There's still the end piece on there, but not much of it sticking through. We'll just pry that out of there. It's gone. And now we have a pulley that's free to be welded onto something. Found a couple strips of steel, 1 by 1/8 here. That one's too short, but that one has extra length. I can eyeball it straight pretty well. Now we could use this piece. I took my strips of metal and drilled some holes down them. And attached a couple pulleys. Earlier I mentioned that these pulleys are designed to be in tension. I'm going to run a rope around them, putting them both in compression and a side load on it. So I got to strengthen those up a little bit, which should be easy. I got my outside piece all welded up with my pulleys in place, and I'm sitting on the barrel. Now I just drill through all the holes into the tube. Hi. I'm going to use countersunk screws so nothing protrudes out of the wall. Got all the bolts in place. The springs are attached to this bolt right here. Now last time this bolt broke off the end. As the piston moved forward, it slammed into these bolts. I've added a piece of heater hose here to act as a slight cushion. Also, by having this piece of steel all the way down it, it should transfer the load from this bolt when it gets hit down to all those. And this cross member will actually put the whole tube in compression. Now we have the rope going from the piston through this pulley, up to this pulley. I kicked this pulley at a little bit of an angle so I could put this on top. I've got a piece of tubing there, and then an old pull start handle, and another piece of heater hose. Right now those springs are pulled a little bit, and all the force is being loaded in this rubber hose. So as that moves up, the first thing it's going to hit is this handle. But the rope might stretch. And so the next thing to hit are these little pieces of heater hose here. And hopefully that'll provide a soft enough landing to keep this whole thing together. Let's find out. It didn't break. There's 20 feet from where we launched. So we're past 20 feet. Let's try to go further. Hit the building. Let's try that again. Gonna have to come up with an aiming mechanism here. All right. Oh. Well, apparently we're going for up. Not impressive up. One more at a 45-degree angle, then we'll figure out an aiming system. Oh, I had some distance. Yeah, almost another 10 feet. So far it looks like everything's holding together. I don't see any cracks in the plastic. I definitely have to cut that off, but that's minor. Looks like the pulleys are staying stationary. Because of the angle I put this on, I only reinforced one side, not the other. But one side might be enough, because so far it's working. Clock the forklift. We're definitely going to need an aiming system here. Gonna knock off those bolts before I forget. These seats mount on a pivot. There's one bolt and it sits on a little ledge here. That's the mount for the back seat, the pivot bolt, and the ledge. So I know those are strong enough to hold a person. I attached some braces to the original seat mounts. They're a 5/16 fine thread. The only bolts I had were too long, but I used some 3/8 thread hex spacers and put them on top. Now it works fine. I also noticed a nice big cross member down here, so I'm going to run some vertical supports to a cross member and get that side a little better too. But now I need to do some welding. My freshly installed gas tank is right there. It is metal, but I still want to protect it from sparks. So I got some old sheet metal that almost fits. It flexes and bends. Now the verticals are welded in, but not to the cross member. They're just sitting there pushing down in compression. And on the back I did a quick little tab on both sides here. I left them a little extra long so I could make some triangulation if needed. That's just laying on top of the other tab. So right now there's nothing permanently attached. I can undo those two bolts and the whole thing will pop right out. But with weight on it, it should be totally sturdy just sitting there. Now we can attach the fun stuff. The start of the fun stuff is going to be a loose spindle and hub I happen to have lying here on the ground. The reason I have them lying here on the ground is I haven't cleaned up from my last video yet. And on the subject of cleaning up after the last video, at the end I'd asked a question about what you guys wanted to see for the length of videos. And there were some comments with very specific time frames, like a pot of coffee, or a large pizza, or 4 beers. I'm not exactly sure how that works out into minutes. You guys can figure that out at home. But the most common response, and the one I like the best, is however long it takes to finish the project. So I'm going to continue just making it up as I go along. I'll find out how long they are at the end, after they're done. But for now, we got stuff to build. I'm going to use a transfer punch to transfer the holes from the spindle into a cross member. I'm going to put a bolt and then a nut on it. And that's because the back of the spindle has a lip on it that would interfere with a straight cross member. We'll just space it off a little bit and we'll be fine. Now I can put that spindle anywhere I want, front and back. And I have no idea where I should put it. I don't know if I should have it more to the rear to give more clearance around the driver. We'll need some kind of body work that goes backwards a little bit if I move it rearward. But the person's weight was between that bolt and that tab. So I'm thinking maybe right there would be a better option. This is going to be a wild guess thing. I just welded it in there without thinking about it too hard. Got a couple old bearings. These have been sitting outside for quite a while. Got chunks of dirt in them. At a minimum they should be cleaned and repacked. I'll take the piece of grass off. Definitely shouldn't just be reused as is. We'll get that small rock out of there. It's not like it's going to spin fast or very far. With this whole thing pivoting, I got 2 sets of fasteners to work with. The studs that held on the wheel, plus the bolt holes that hold on the hub. Both should be pretty strong. So we got some options. I got a bunch of drops under my saw here. That looks useful. I drilled a hole in the corners of the angle, moved them over as far as I could so they could overlap, and bolted them down. In theory, I should make a slice here, so those are both at the same level, but I'm just going to ignore that. I think it'll work anyway. Somewhere around there might be good. I'm gonna put this in a vise to cut that. That's better. Got all sorts of scraps under this saw. They got a lot of these. It's sturdy. Pivot's easy. This is an old boat winch. I already modified it for another project. Version 1 of this. Might be just right. We'll give it a try. Tack welds for now. I need to steal a seat. I think the one I want is in here. Yep, it's green. This is a few years ago. It hasn't run in a while. Someday I gotta finish that one up. Fairly sturdy. Time to do a quick test fit. Yep, get to the handle easy. I think this will work. I was just looking at this drop that came off when I cut off that seat post. I think I could use this. I could put that as a tie-in to connect both this seat to that arm. I think that'll add a lot of rigidity. Then I don't have to worry about the brackets on the bolts. This will take a lot of the load. I found just what I was looking for bodywork materials. I'm not sure if the cashier rung it up right, but I got a piece of particle board, a thin piece of plywood, and a piece of tongue and groove for 23 bucks. Also, because I had procrastinated long enough, all the Christmas decorations were 50% off. So I got a half-price electric reindeer. This wood was half-price because it had problems, like holes already drilled in it. But I got to cut a lot of this away anyway. Gotta start down low so I can still get into it. We'll be able to see that line a little better once I cut it out. Something along this line should do. Definitely gonna have to paint it. Yeah, I was just wondering, is it still called deburring when you're working with wood? I don't actually know what you call it. Yeah, we'll call it deburring. Desplintering? We're gonna do that. I went and desplintered the wood, so I had a smooth rounded edge everywhere. I unbolted the whole thing, got all the welds on the back side. Even though I didn't see these tabs deflecting, I added a corner brace on both sides, and then a coat of paint. On the sides I was going to go with bright red, but then I saw this barn red. I thought that might go better with the rusted and faded paint I already have. And it was pre-mixed, so I didn't need to talk to anyone. Hopefully this works out. I chopped up that tongue and groove into decking material, made a hole for the pivot. And for the best color match, I should just go ahead and coat this with that same barn red. But it has a nice wood grain to it, and I can't bring myself to do it. So I'm going to completely ignore that this won't match the rest of the vehicle and go ahead and clear coat these. I found an old can of spar varnish. It's actually not varnish, it's urethane. But anyway, it's a clear wood coat. Chunks are coming out of the lid. Hasn't been opened in many, many years. I think I got enough left to do the job though. And then it doesn't go to waste. Some self-drilling screws to hold this decking down. Well, that's not the way to do it. This screw drove through the board and kept lifting the board up before it drilled through the metal. It lifted the board up and broke the groove in the one next to it. So now I'm going to pre-drill the holes. The tongue and groove board was cheap because it was warped. Now I should hit that metal first and not lift the board up. There we go. Those studs are just a 1/2 inch fine thread, standard thread, and I had 2 nuts that fit it fine. And that was it. I need 4. Remember, lug nuts can be installed either direction. Just point the cone up, you get a nice flat surface on the other side. I salvaged some old crates and got the wood out of them. They've got these funny little wavy connectors, so I got to remove those. Just pulling them out sideways. There we go. Now I got cross members. I'm gonna drill a couple holes right on this ridge on either side of the tube. Then I'm gonna run a zip tie through that, around the tube. And now that's held rigidly in place, so this can't flop around. I'm debating adding a set of runners on the bottom to make this more slippery. We're gonna try it as is. This can has a lip on it where the lid used to grab on. So anything in there sliding out is gonna drag across that lip. I debated cutting it off, but it seems like that adds a lot of strength and keeps this more round. It might deform if I didn't have that outer lip. Luckily, from a different project, there's some vinyl tape. Well, this will form a ramp. It'll kind of smooth out that transition a little bit. We'll see how it works. Things are starting to come together here. I taped off the white. Wanted more than just one color on this. Figure red and white, we'll go candy cane type themes. I actually cracked the bottom of the seat trying this out. Might have to do with being decades old plastic, something like that, but it needs to be stronger. Luckily, I found a piece of plywood that was already painted green. So we're just gonna reinforce it. Plywood first, seat next. Got the plywood bolted on. Countersunk wood screws hold the seat into the plywood. Hopefully that won't break. I'm starting to put together the back part. The color doesn't match exactly. A little bit of dust on this, I think it'll blend in fine. No clearance issues. I'm using those old pieces of crate as a cross member. I was actually able to put a couple longer bolts on those gas tank mounts, and that cross member is bolted right there. Got some used drywall screws to attach the side pieces to those cross members. The reason I got that thin plywood is it bends really easy, so I can have some curvature to this section and get a little more realistic look. I mounted the cross members at the angle I want the plywood to end up, but I still need to form it there. I know you're supposed to add moisture to plywood to make it really flexible. I'm hoping the thinness will do it. I'm going to take one of my long screws and try to draw the plywood to that beam. I've got them just started there. I'm moving them one at a time, a little bit at a time, pulling that wood into place. I didn't expect the curvature to be perfect, so I inset it from the outside, so it kind of looks like it was meant to be that way. But I'm pretty happy with the way it basically follows the contour. Now that I know how my curve is going to sit, I can go ahead and add my third cross member, and that'll stiffen that panel right up. We do have sharp jagged points sticking out here. That's okay. Now that it's in place, I can put some short screws in and take out those long ones. I want to trim the top of this. A straight line just wouldn't look right. And there's no way I'll be able to freehand an arc and make it look symmetric. So I got an old bandsaw blade. I'm going to clamp the blade to the sides, try to get it fairly level. I have a nice even arc all the way along. You use a hacksaw to get the ends. We can fire backwards again. Now I'm going to sand that top edge. I even found some sandpaper for wood. Look how happy those people are. This stuff must be fun to use.
I think they exaggerated the level of fun.
The roller from yesterday wasn't quite dry. Might be able to get the touch-ups done out of it. Shove this in the corner there. That'll work fine. We'll even get these screw heads. It's like an eraser. We need to do a little decorating here. Recently bought, only used it once. We gotta do a little bit of fixing here. Got it fixed. Apparently a little too well. It ripped the clip right off the light. That air pressure's gotta go down a little bit. I tried stapling directly on the body of the light, and the staple didn't really go in. I broke the light. Still turns on though, so we're okay for now. I finally decided to just staple a Phillips head screwdriver in, and then pull it out. Now I've got a loop, and that little clip goes on it perfect. This back panel is thin enough, I was able to just use paper clips on one wire. These lights came with a zigzag from the package. I figure I'll use that. That should let it flex pretty well, as long as I don't spin in too many circles. I'm going to take a 20-foot length of 1x1 tubing and split it in half.
I put in a bend near the front.
I added a few cross members, attached them with some globs of weld, and now I got a quick little framework with a kick up at the front. I need an attachment point in the front, and luckily whoever ran this into a tree put it pretty close to on center. I pulled this off an old boat with a bad hull. 2 holes through there should do it. That should be sturdy. Put down a tie down first. Now we're going to slide this underneath and attach a tie down to that new boat mounting point. Now we'll just ratchet this up. That looks pretty centered. Reasonably sturdy for what we're going to put on it. Hopefully zip ties will hold this well enough. Right now I just have zip ties in each foot. I did put a cross member there in the center of the wheelbase, or center of the deer base, center of the leg base, right there, so I could run diagonal ties, keep her from sliding back and forth if needed. It's a little wobbly. I don't think this is meant to be vehicle mounted. Might need to sturdy it up a little bit. With the self-drilling screws and flat washers, we're a lot better. Actually, it looks like the whole framework is wobbling, but this is pretty rigid on top. Was resting on this one bolt head, so the whole thing was just rocking on it. Now that I've slid it forward, we're pretty rigid. Wobbles a little bit, but not too bad. I think we might be in the range of good enough. At least good enough to test. I added a couple bungee cords to pull this forward and springs to center. I didn't want it to start spinning around on me as I drove. Let's do a quick test. That should work. I bought some ammo and heavyweight paper to wrap them in. Got my ammo box here, the main artillery rounds. I also decided to fill some snack bags with candy, just to have variety. That'll tuck right there. Easy reach.
I should have reinforced the internal connections on the deer. The kind of thing you learn after decapitating it. 1 minute's fine. The next minute, the head's laying on the ground. A quick reattachment before any kids saw it, and I was back in business. Now's the real test.
I feel threatened.
Do you feel threatened?
Yes, it's a cannon.
Oh my gosh! This is why you're like the coolest Santa ever. Hold on. Stop before. You need the Santa hat.
You do need the Santa hat. You're right. We're going to demonstrate the cannon now.
Almost got it.
I don't think I'm going to hit the camera.
Can I shoot?
Pull, and as soon as you let go, it goes. You shot him in the butt.
I shot him in the butt.
Target acquired.
Uh-huh.
What else we got in here? One more present, one more bag of candy.
Two
bags of candy. You want to try to catch, or you want to keep firing?
I want to try to catch.
Ah, almost got it.
Almost.
In position.
Yep.
Oh, the tree knocked it out of your sight line.
Yeah.
Should we try it one more time?
Yeah.
Open area. Reload. All right. I'm going to go that way now. Looks more open that way. Got it!
I got it! Thank
Nice.
you! This is so cool! Thank you!
Oh, you're welcome. Was that fun?
Yeah, it was really fun.
Nice.
I was really happy I did this project. I even had time for a donut break. Well, I'm not sure if the technical term is donut break when you're driving a tracked sleigh, but it's something fun.
That's almost the end of the video, but I've got 2 things left I want to do. There's something I gotta try. We'll see how that does. Get an elevation up there. Someday I'll need a new handle. That works pretty well. And the other thing is I want to drive this in snow. I was aiming for a ski slope that's past that mountain range off in the distance. Didn't look like it was going to survive the trip.
This shot was supposed to be showing the wood panels flapping at speed, not highlighting that I haven't washed the vehicle in 3 years.
So we stopped at the first mountain range in the hopes there'd be snow. There might be snow up there, but it's not right here. Snow is just not happening right now. Eventually, but not now. So I would call that a fail, but I can't. I had too much fun in this video to call anything a fail. I hope you're having fun too. Have a Merry Christmas, and we'll see you next time.